Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping Massachusetts Beautiful. I'm Neil Ryan, founder and executive director of Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. Our nonprofit organization is taking action to make Massachusetts a cleaner, greener place to live, work, and play. And today's guest is Emily Norton, the chapter director of the Massachusetts Sierra Club, and she's also a Newton City councilor. So welcome, Emily.
Neil, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate it. So to get started, if you could just provide a brief overview of the Massachusetts Sierra Club and what your mission is all about. I don't think a lot of people are probably familiar with the national organization, but maybe just talk about how you're focused on Massachusetts.
Sure. So the National Sierra Club has been in existence since 1892. Many people are familiar with the Sierra Club nationally. There are 63 local chapters, state chapters, I should say, around the country, and Massachusetts is one of them. We have over 60,000 members and supporters across Massachusetts. We have members here in Braintree and around the region. And we work to, particularly we're focused on climate change, as a lot of environmental organizations are right now, but we also work on solid waste, water quality, really whatever our members are interested in.
Okay. So we're going to talk about some of those things, but first just a little bit more about you and how you kind of came to be the chapter director of the Massachusetts Sierra Club.
Yeah, so I've worked in either environmental policy or politics my whole life, and so this was a natural place for me to land a couple of years ago. And I've worked in areas, I've worked in think tanks, and I've worked on campaigns, and I think what's exciting for me about being at the Sierra Club is that while we do white papers, we do lobby inside the building at the State House, I think it's really our grassroots advocacy and our large membership across the state that really makes a difference. That's where the power is in our democracy.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the environmental issues your chapter is focusing on. I know you mentioned climate change. So you want to just give me a quick overview of the kind of the top things you're working on right now?
Sure. So many people are aware that Massachusetts is a leader when it comes to the environment, but particularly we have something called the Global Warming Solutions Act, which was passed in 2008 and sets very strict, ambitious guidelines for reducing greenhouse gases. The first target is 2020, and it's very close whether we're actually going to make that target. And then the next target isn't until 2050, where we have to reduce our greenhouse gases 80% below 1990 levels. So we are working very hard to hold our politicians' feet to the fire so that we meet those targets. And particularly in the area of transportation, that is a very difficult issue or a difficult sector to reach. So that is one of the areas that we're really focusing on right now, is making the changes that we need to so that we get more of our transportation sector to be powered by electricity. It's kind of a light bulb that goes off for people when they think about it, but our power grid, we are doing more and more to, it's called decarbonize, or bring more renewable energy into our power grid. There's really not a renewable version of petroleum. So the more we have our cars powered by electricity, as we green up our power grid, that greens up our cars and our trucks and our buses. And the same thing on the heating sector. The more we can be powering our heating systems with electricity, not the old baseboard heat, but heat pumps, again, the more we can be powering our society on electricity and then greening up our electric grid, that's how we get to a truly 100% renewable economy and society. So those are the policies that we are pushing.
And for those, some people are more concerned about climate change than others. Some believe it's a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese. But just talk a little bit about how Massachusetts specifically is whether you believe in the cause, that it's caused by man or whatever the cause may be. I think we just had our warmest ever October on a record, I believe, or it's very close, or it beat the record. And the last several years, every year, we're setting records worldwide. So what, regardless of the cause, what is the danger here in Massachusetts to our infrastructure, our way of life?
Yeah, and I'm even going to push back a little bit on the question. Here in Massachusetts, we are fortunate that we don't have policymakers that question the science, and we don't even have that many citizens that question the science. WBUR came out with a poll a couple months ago that showed that even in just the last 2 years, the number of Massachusetts voters, not residents, but voters, those are the ones that politicians care about, who believe that climate change is real, that they're somewhat or very alarmed by it, that it's caused by human beings, went up from 78% to 88%. So when you have 88% of our voters with that level of belief, there really is no excuse for any politician to be going as far as we possibly technologically can to get off of fossil fuels. So I just wanted to make that clear, because my counterparts in Indiana or Oklahoma or so forth, they don't necessarily have that luxury in terms of the politicians that they work with and the electorate. And now I'm trying to remember.
And then what is the danger to
So
Massachusetts?
the danger, well, we've seen, we just got out of the worst 2-year drought that we've had since the 1960s, hundreds of millions of dollars in agricultural losses. Sea level rise is already affecting our beaches on Cape Cod and our other coastlines. If Hurricane Sandy had hit Massachusetts 5 hours earlier during our high tide, all the damage that we saw, if hopefully people still remember, in Atlantic City and Staten Island and New York, would have happened here. We're talking billions of dollars in losses to our electrical system and our food distribution system and fuel distribution. We are not prepared for the storms that we have seen around the country and around the world, and that we have no reason to expect won't hit here.
I've seen things, that the Back Bay in Boston would have been underwater. We're building in the Seaport District, like every time I go down there, there's a new building that has been built within the last 6 months, and that's all right at sea level pretty much, right?
That's right. No, we are looking at a return to the historical levels of what Boston was when the Pilgrims first arrived in this area, and we're not really planning for that very well. So yeah, there's a lot more we need to be doing on the mitigation side, but also the adaptation side.
Okay. Also, I looked in looking at your website. I saw that plastic pollution is another area that you're concerned with, and we at Keep Massachusetts Beautiful are very concerned about. And we had in our previous episode, we had Brad Verder from the Mass Green Network talking about plastic bag ordinances and things of that nature. So, what are you doing or advocating be done in regards to plastic waste in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so if anyone's watched those videos where people go out in the ocean and scoop the water from, even in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, you really can't get to any part of the ocean that does not have plastic particles in it. It is really, really terrifying. There's a recent study that found that 94% of samples of United States drinking water has plastic in it. So we really have a problem here, but it's interesting, there isn't the focus on it the way there is on climate change. So here we are focusing, we are pushing statewide bans on plastic bags, polystyrene, trying to get at these sources of plastic that should be easier to reduce. Plastic is such an integral part of our society, so it's going to be very difficult to get rid of it everywhere, but certainly something, those products of convenience, you buy your toothbrush, you carry it in a bag from CVS for 5 minutes. Do we really need a bag for that? Yes. So we have been working very closely with Brad Verder and many other grassroots groups and individuals to enact local bans on single-use plastic bags. And we're up to 56. Wakefield, I think, just a few days ago was the 56th, and also restricting polystyrene. So your styrofoam is what it's more commonly known as. I think we're up to 28 communities have banned or restricted polystyrene, and working on that. In Newton, we did ban the plastic bags, and we're working on the polystyrene. We had a meeting about it last night. So those are some areas with the hope that community by community by community, as we have more local bans, then we would be able to demonstrate enough political support in the State House for it to get a statewide ban of both of those items. Municipal use of plastic bottles, school use of plastic bottles, those are things that could be restricted. We can have water fountains, we can have people carry water bottles. So looking at least at the low-hanging fruit of where we use plastic and where we can reduce it, I think is a really good start. And why not Massachusetts in terms of the leadership that we show in so many areas.
Right, or I know that California has already passed a statewide bag ordinance, and we have one that's been proposed here that's working its way through committees. And we'll talk about a little bit about what citizens can do to advocate for those types of things.
Yeah, wait, one more bill I want to mention is Randy Hunt from Sandwich.
Yes.
He has a bill that would add nip bottles to the bottle bill. Obviously, we had an effort to try to expand the bottle bill, which would have been an incredible benefit in this area, and it was not successful a few years ago. So I'm excited that he was actually not in favor of that bottle bill expansion, but he's a Republican from Sandwich, but he does favor this, which could be, you know, a foot in the door to getting more restrictions. So we're actively lobbying on that.
Yes, I've spoken with him, I've met with him, definitely support that bill. And even like you said, a lot of people who traditionally may not be fans of the bottle bill are disgusted by the amounts of nip litter. Not only is it the litter is obviously an issue with drunk driving.
Exactly.
Actually, I talked with his aide last week. We're going to initiate a contest, like an art contest early next year, for people to do creative things with the nips that they create to demonstrate just how much is out there. I personally clean up a stretch of road near my house. It's about 4/10 of a mile each way. I did it last summer, and I picked up 66 nip bottles, I believe it was. You know, and it's insane. So I think that would be a great idea if we can. It's not going to solve the problem, but
as a way to creatively, I spoke with him about this idea as well, as a way to creatively draw attention to it, because that is really the challenge in the State House, is getting people's attention. There's so many bills, there's so many issues. Environment is just one of them, as we're watching the news right now. And so how do you get people's attention? If you can do things creatively, such as an art project with nip bottles, just to show how many of these there are, why not?
We need to raise awareness.
Yes.
So, all right, so among other things we need to raise awareness about, I was, again, looking at the Sierra Club's website, so that one of your issues is gas leaks.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's a very well-known issue, and people may say, well, what's that got to do with protecting the environment? So if you could explain.
Yeah, so gas leaks are technically made of methane, and methane is much more effective at trapping heat and being a greenhouse gas. So when our distribution system, which is very old here in Massachusetts, leaks gas, and you can smell it, that's contributing to global warming. It's also very unsafe. There have been explosions around the country from gas leaks. It kills trees. I know with my city council role in Newton, there's areas where we just can't plant trees because they will just continue to die because of all the gas leaks. And then lastly, it's a big waste of money because the utilities charge you for the gas that leaks. So, you know, what other industry would they be able to get away with that? So a bill was passed in the last session that puts some restrictions on the utilities and has some timelines for cleanup or for repair of these leaks, nowhere near what we need to do. And it does require them to look particularly at the super emitters. We have about 7% of the leaks are responsible for, it's an estimated 50% of the greenhouse gases. So particularly if we can focus on the worst leaks. But it's very expensive. The utilities have a lot of power. So what we would like to do next is require them to pay for the leaked gas, because we think that would make them fix these leaks a lot more quickly. But it really is an urgent issue, and different communities have different leaks. I know in Newton we have over 600. Wow. So it's a huge, huge problem.
And even if you can't smell it, I mean, is there a danger to your health if you live near one? I mean, you're breathing in
yeah, I mean,
those fumes?
You know, different studies show different things, but there is some evidence that it is not healthy to be living near and breathing in methane on a regular basis.
Okay, all right, so that's interesting. So let's just shift modes here a little bit and talk about, you know, we've got these issues and many other environmental issues. Let's talk a little bit about environmental advocacy and environmental law and how the system works. You know, how do ordinary citizens get involved, contact their politicians, their representatives to advocate for things that they think should be changed?
Yeah, so a lot of folks, if they have not engaged with their state legislators, their senator, the representative, it can seem intimidating, it can seem a very murky process. And so we do a lot of trainings all over the state to try to, break down those barriers and make people feel less intimidated, because, your legislators, they work for you. And it really doesn't take that many people making a call, going to a meeting to really have an impact on their local legislator. Because when you think about it, you're not trying to reach your US senator or congressman. There's really not that many people that they have to represent. So the few that do step up, we're talking 5 calls on an issue, really makes a difference to them. So what we do is help people get up to speed on the issue that they would like to advocate on, in particular, like I said, some of these bills, the plastics, the climate change bills, and so forth. And then help them understand, if you're a state rep or a state senator, we don't have very high voter turnout in those races. So if you might be in a room with them, we work with people to help organize, say, a meeting at a community center or a library, and you have 5 people, 10 people, 15 people there. Well, to your legislator, you represent a lot more than that, because when you think about it, not that many people vote, and if you're a legislator, you only care about the voters, because that's who gets you into that seat. Yeah. And then whoever is willing to show up at a meeting like that is probably the type of person in their community who's sort of an influencer, who other people might say, Jane, I don't really follow things, just tell me who to vote for. So your legislator might be looking at a room full of 10 people, but realize they could really be representing 100 people or 200 people, depending on what their networks are. So number one, we try to help people understand you have more power than you realize in that way. And then also, the way the State House is organized, it's not really a democracy. The Speaker of the House has a lot more power than everyone. The Chair of Ways and Means has a lot more power. And they decide who, especially the Speaker, who is in leadership, so who is a committee chair. The folks in leadership have more power. So if you're a rep, especially focus on the House side, because they're a little bit, they're more challenging on environmental issues. So if your rep is in leadership, they're more powerful. So we try to get people from, well, I don't even know who these people are or what sort of influence they are, to get them to understand, like, no, you actually have a lot of power, particularly if your rep is in leadership. But you have to understand they're in leadership because they're expected to toe the line with the Speaker. So we try to, just sort of get people up to speed on how that all works.
So when you say leadership, on a specific committee?
Right, a committee, there's division chairs, there's party chairs, there's a lot of levels of leadership. And actually, if you're in leadership, you actually make more money. Folks may remember they gave themselves a big raise back in February, so now they make even more money than they used to. No judgment on that, but it is something to consider, is that they're in leadership, they make more money, it's a very low base pay, so it's kind of a big deal.
Yes.
And so it would make it even harder for someone to go against the Speaker. So it really, really is important that they hear from constituents on these issues.
And there's one committee I know that kind of is more important than others when it comes to environmental issues. Do you know?
Well, there's an environment committee, and then there's the Telecom, Utilities, and Energy Committee, okay. TUE.
Okay, so those are the two you want to.
Those are very important. Yes.
All right. Also, I recently participated in a lobby day for parks and water that was organized by the Environmental League of Massachusetts. So do you have experience in participating in those as well?
The lobby days are great. The lobby days are great. Anything you can do to make it clear to your legislator. I mean, when we do these trainings, we try to give some visuals. So we have one of like a pile of cookies that's really high, and you want your cookie to be at the top of the pile. And so whatever you can do to raise the urgency of your issue. Doesn't mean that healthcare and jobs and et cetera, aren't important. But if we really care about our issues, then we need to take steps to make them so they come to the top of the pile. I'll just tell a short story. About 2 years ago, a bill was introduced into the House that would have really decimated our solar industry. It would have added minimum charges. It would have changed the reimbursement rates, including retroactively for large solar projects. We have over 15,000 people in Massachusetts employed in the solar industry, but this really would have harmed that. Mm-hmm. And so, I ask people, in these trainings, so how do you think that bill did? Well, it passed 150 to 2. So when you have a bill pass 150 to 2 in the legislature and the House side, it's not just the conservatives, it's not just the Republicans, it really, everyone voted for this bill that literally would have decimated our solar industry. And that was only 2 years ago. It's not like we didn't know about climate change back then. Right. And it was because, and there had already been lobby days. It's not like there hadn't been any lobbying, but sometimes these issues can be complicated, retail net metering, so what does that even mean? So we learned from that we hadn't done enough grassroots advocacy to educate members and to make them understand that, no, your constituents, we really care about this. We're following this, we really care about this. Yeah. Another challenge that we have is that the state legislature has exempted themselves from the open meeting law. So, as a city councilor, I have to abide by the open meeting law. We can't vote behind closed doors. We can't deliberate behind closed doors, but they can do those things at the State House. So that makes it even more difficult to hold people accountable when they're able to take these steps. And I totally get why they like to do that. It's a lot easier. But I do think we get a better result by having to do everything in public. So that's just another challenge.
A double standard there, huh?
Very much.
Not a little bit, a pretty big double standard.
Very much, yes.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention at the lobby day that I participated in last week, which was for parks, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and water protection, was the fact that currently it's a half of 1 penny statewide goes towards environmental protection, and that is below the 1% that our governor, committed to. Obviously, we have lots of challenges. We know that we've got healthcare, opioid crisis, things of that nature, and it's not easy. But I know that was the purpose of that event, was to try to raise awareness about that and get educate people that if we want to have clean water, I don't know anyone who's against clean water and clean air.
Look at Puerto Rico right now, and what issue is most important to them, right? I mean, clean water, access to power. They can't even live their lives right now. Right. So these issues are too often seen as peripheral. I think people take the environment for granted because we don't have rivers catching on fire anymore. Yeah. But it doesn't. It doesn't mean that that we're going in the right direction. If we don't get climate change right, jobs, healthcare, everything else is moot. Right. Everything else is moot. So that is what we try to do, is to give people the tools to make their voices heard. And it's not just a one-time deal where you show up at a lobby day and you say, hi to your rep, I really care about this, and then you go away. You want to have a relationship with them. You want them, what I say to people is, it's great if you know the name of your state rep and your state senator. Right. It's even better if they know your name and they know to worry about you and think about, what is Neil, how's he going to feel about the step I take on this? Or even, I'll have my aide call Neil and get his, or I'll call Neil, or I'll text Neil to get his advice on this. That's what you want, is for your legislator to really think of you as an important person in the community, an important constituency that they have to care about.
Absolutely. The other thing, an interesting stat that came out of that was that funding for the DCR is down 55% since 2009. I think a similar amount for our Department of Environmental Protection. So, that's significant. And, for a lot of low-income people, especially who want to just enjoy a local park, the camping season has been shortened. Yep. Because of the fact that we don't have enough people to staff the parks or maintain them. So it's really a quality of life issue. And, whether you're an environmentalist or not, you might, just simply the act of going to a local park, is something most people, I think, would expect that we would have enough money and devote enough money to those types of things.
Yeah, we are entering, it seems like a long way off for some people, but really we are entering the campaign season for the governor, and this would be a great time to remind him of his pledge of 1% for the environment and how much you value parks, how much you value clean water. The Boston Globe had an article about this a few months ago. One of the areas that we've cut back on because of the lack of funding at DEP is checking for fecal matter in our rivers and streams. And so sometimes I'll give these, talks and say, if there's one thing that we can all agree on, we should not have poop in our rivers and streams. I think we can all agree, yes. Whether you believe in climate change or not, that that's something we want our tax dollars to be paying someone to check on.
Yeah, and we just recently had that big failure up in, was it Lowell or Merrimack, with the big storm a couple of weeks ago, where I don't know how many millions of gallons of raw sewage went into the Merrimack River?
I missed that. So
So the big rainstorm we had a couple weeks ago caused a huge problem up there. So that's a very good point. So just to sum up, if I'm a citizen here in Massachusetts, I care about these issues, what are some ways I can get involved?
So yeah, contact us at the Sierra Club through our website, sierraclub.org/Massachusetts. We would love to, we use volunteers at whatever ability they're able. We have some folks who just come into the office periodically or attend a training so you can get some of these tools yourself. I was so heartened that a couple high school girls who attended our training in Worcester got really motivated and put together a presentation on gas leaks that they are presenting to their state rep, Representative O'Day, in the next few weeks. So the more that we can give people the tools they need to take action on issues that they already care about, that's what this is really all about. And also to try to help, people, I think, to some level feel the urgency, but just to remind people, look at the news, look at what's happening, and to just remember that Massachusetts is more important in many, many ways than other states. Mm-hmm. We are a state that others look to for leadership. Just literally in the past week, the first state in the country to ban bump stocks after the Las Vegas shooting, but whether it's healthcare, gay marriage, et cetera, et cetera. So the environment is something that people will definitely look to us for. So we shouldn't be waiting for leadership from somewhere else. We need to be taking action, and that means we need our citizens to be requiring this of our elected officials. That's their job. We have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now than we have ever had since there have been humans on the planet, and we are pumping more and more every single day. So the issue is urgent. Let's take action now, and we will help you do that.
Okay.
That's our message to folks.
All right, take action. I like that. Because that's part of our mission at Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. Key words. So thank you for taking time, Emily, to educate us today. Hopefully, I learned a lot, and hopefully our viewers did as well. For more information, as you mentioned, you can visit the Mass Sierra Club at sierraclub.org/Massachusetts. You've also got a Facebook page, and you're on Twitter at Sierra Club.
At Mass Sierra Club.
At Mass Sierra Club. And for more information about Keep Massachusetts Beautiful, please visit our website, keepmassbeautiful.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, which keeps us busy. And I just want to also promote the fact that we are kicking off registration for the 2018 Great Massachusetts Cleanup, which is a statewide effort for volunteers to get out and clean up a lot of that plastic pollution we talked about, as well as styrofoam and all kinds of other items that are out there, the nip bottles. So that will take place in April 28th, 2018, as well as other weekends in the spring. So go to keepmassbeautiful.org, and you can sign up as a volunteer, or if you want to be a cleanup captain and organize something in your community, we ask you to do that. Sign up now, because you have to do that in advance. You can't decide on April 1st you're going to do a town-wide cleanup the following weekend. Takes a little bit of planning. Finally, I just want to thank the crew here at Braintree Community Access for allowing us to use their facility. And until next time, let's all work to keep Massachusetts beautiful.